Hello, this is Adam with DreamMadeProductions. This video is made possible by the very kind donations of viewers like you. Thank you. If you are in a position to help this channel improve quality and grow, please visit my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/DreamMadeProductions, linked below.
It is the 31st century, and mankind is once again at war. The battlefields of the future are dominated by huge robotic war machines known as battlemechs.
Hello, and happy Halloween. As has become the custom, I have returned with another tale of fear and grief to usher in the cold, lonely nights. Ladies, gentlemen, friends, family, loved ones, I ask your indulgence to introduce myself. I am Adam with DreamMadeProductions, and I will be your humble host on this night of woe. Outside, the seasons change, and with change brings a fear of the unknown. While many of us are old enough to understand how the world works, deep down there is a primitive part of ourselves that fears the changing of the seasons, the shift from the bounties of spring and summer to the coming time of rarity known as winter. A time when the world was not safe and we were much more primal than we are today. Our story begins on a nameless battlefield, upon a nameless world in the depths of the Secession Wars. While we today remember this time for its darkness, and rightfully so, not every battle in the 300-year-old war was fought with weapons of mass destruction, nor battlemech gods of war. No. Most of these conflicts were fought between simple soldiers, often stalemated in the terrors of what we call today trench warfare. Yet, sometimes, something far more primitive, something out of our prehistoric past, returns to remind us that, in the end, despite taking to the stars, we are still not all that different than the hairless monkeys we thought we left behind. Day 1. The engines of the drop shuttle whined as Lieutenant Schmidt and his squad hit the ground. Fanning out in the clearing, there was a loud thud as a pilot containing gear and supplies quickly followed them down. After securing the area, they began to offload the pallet and split off the loads. Even this far back from the enemy lines, there was always the danger that an enemy sniper or other unknown danger could be around. Once they felt safe enough, they began to divide the packs and satchels between them. The war had ground to a halt and had long since stalemated. Each side dug into trenches and set up artillery batteries. The result was a pair of trench lines separated by miles of a dead zone, a no man's land that either side was overly willing to risk committing their few remaining heavy tanks or battle mech assets. Lieutenant Schmidt and his squad were being assigned to Hill 1157, a very important piece of terrain in this zone of the conflict. It was one of the few high spots that had a view of the flatland all around it. It was a key location for calling in air and artillery strikes. The enemy had not missed the importance of Hill 1157, or Hugel de Grava, as the locals called it. The hill had steep sides, but at its top it was a kind of plateau. The hill's top existed in a kind of isolation from the rest of the war. The sides were steep enough that only battle mechs could scale it, but its summit was high and wide enough that both sides had established trench works. In other words, its top had become a microcosm of the war below. A stalemate, as the two sides sent in small squads to observe and spot, but generally lacked the heavy equipment to overrun their counterparts on the other side, and neither side willing to risk a major assault using battle mechs. The fact that trees still stood, well, if you could call the skeletal-like wood trees, offered a surprise to Lieutenant Schmidt and his squad. After months of living in foxholes, dugouts, and endless miles of trench work, it was a welcome change to be out walking in, well, something approaching nature. A steep climb in full gear plus cargo was exhausting, but, much to their delight, uneventful. Things changed near the summit. They were to relieve the squad sent before them. Lieutenant Schmidt had expected to find the diminished squad waiting for them, eager for the rotation back for some R&R. But as they drew closer, they encountered no sentries, no sign of other men. Once the observation trench and dugout appeared without their squad being challenged, it was apparent something was very wrong. Schmidt ordered half of his men to stay hidden with the gear while he took the rest of his squad forward to investigate. They slipped quietly into the trench, found it abandoned. They could see it had been occupied at one time. Empty rations cans, cigarette packages were piled in refuse stacks. No one manned the positions. Quietly, they stalked around the dugout, finding it well built, a heavy door closed and barred. Lieutenant Schmidt motioned for his sergeant, corporal, to open the door. As they tried, a shot rang out. They ducked back into the trench as pistol fire rang from inside the dugout, followed by a man yells, "Get away! Stay away!" he screamed. Schmidt called out, "This is Lieutenant Schmidt, 5th Squad, hold your fire!" The panicked man's only reply was more wild pistol shots and screams of, "You're not real! You're not real!" "He's lost it, sir," the corporal observed. "Should I slip a grenade in?" he asked. "No," Schmidt replied. "Let's try to take him alive. It's important we find out what's going on here." Slipping around, Schmidt and his men moved to slip into the dugout. As the gunfire ceased, Schmidt called out again, the man continuing to insist on the falsehood of his identity. Trying to calm the man further, Schmidt kept speaking as he inched his way to see inside. The soldier was sitting on the far wall. He was little more than skin and bones in his uniform. Twitching and holding the pistol, he thought he recognized him. "Hey," Schmidt called. "Jim, right? 8th Squad? Come on, put that down." For just an instant, the pale man, really little more than a boy, his eyes seemed to clear. Recognition seemed to dawn in his panicked eyes. The pistol dropped just a bit, but did not point elsewhere. "Schmidt?" the man asked. "Yeah, remember?" Schmidt cooed, trying to reassure him. "It's me. I'm real. I'm here to send you home." Schmidt had thought the mention of home would calm the man further, but it seemed to have the opposite effect. His hand began to shake, and his eyes widened. He shook his head. "Home? No! She always promises home!" Schmidt rushed forward, but watched in horrifying slow motion as the boy's shaking arm drew the pistol under his chin and pulled the trigger. "Gods damn it!" Schmidt cursed as his men rushed, quickly secured the earthen bunker. Day 3. After 2 days of searching the hilltop, at least all of it the enemy snipers would allow them to search, they had found no trace of the other members of Squad 8. Schmidt had no choice but to report them as MIA. Command had taken the news of a suicide and possible entire squad desertion surprisingly well. They had acknowledged the status report and ordered they set up for spotting and observation operations at once. Combing through the paperwork left behind, the prior squad operations were a mess. Hill 1157 was supposed to be a cake assignment, with the stalemate below mirrored and the stalemate on the hill, calling in coordinates and observing troop movements on a static battlefield was supposed to be a welcome reprieve. Squad 8's report started off well enough, but slowly degraded as stress apparently set in. By the end of what Schmidt could find, they kept going on about ghosts and monsters. Schmidt was, of course, aware of the local folklore. Hugil Dil Graver, or Hill of Graves, was supposed to be haunted by some ancient creature. According to local tradition, some cult had once called the hill their home. After insane sacrifices, they managed to conjure some demon, ghost, or monster. It was all a load of superstition from peasant locals. No ancient legend monster could frighten Schmidt, not after having seen the terror of battle mechs up close. Schmidt set up his squad in the traditional manner. A team on patrol, a team on spotting duty, a team resting, a team manning the trench works, and of course, a team set up as a fast response unit should anything go wrong. The enemy had so far been as gracious as Command had promised. They stayed in their trenches, mirroring their own activity, keeping watch, sending out patrols, and reporting in to their infernal supervisors. It seemed as long as neither side encroached on the other's unmarked territory, they were content to leave the fighting to the men below. Day 10. "I'm telling you, I heard her." "Oh, get off yourself. I swear it was real." "What's all this about?" Schmidt interrupted. Nothing, sir." "He's losing it, LT. Keeps on and on about hearing a girl singing out there." "I'm not losing it. Schmidt interrupted his men's laughter at the private's expense. "Go on, Braun. Tell me what you have heard." The private shifted his weight nervously before speaking up. "A girl, sir. A girl singing at night near the outpost at position 6. It was beautiful, sir." "Like the Thrax playing radio?" "No, nothing like that. Like you could hear her clear as day. I looked around, but no one was out there. It reminded me of home." "The newbie is hearing them ghosts now." The men's laughter followed. I was not! Schmidt turned and returned to the dugout. Despite himself, he could not help but rehear the doomed man's last words. She always promises home. Day 12. What do you mean he's gone? Schmidt insisted. I mean, he wasn't at his post. We went to relieve him, and he just wasn't there. We did a search, the sergeant explained. Damn, Schmidt cursed. Fool Braun must have gone looking for this girl he keeps talking about. It must be some kind of Drac trick. It must be, his sergeant replied. Trick the poor kid. The radio crackled to life unexpectedly. Sir, this is Corporal Huffman. You had better get down here. Something is going on. Schmidt climbed the ladder from the observation trench, his senses immediately heightened. The air was thick with an unnatural quiet, broken only by the crackling of the radio. He rushed towards Huffman's position, his heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and fear. When he arrived, Huffman was pale and wide-eyed, pointing towards a section of the trench. Sir, you need to see this, he whispered. Schmidt pushed past him, peered into the trench. There, etched into the earthen walls, were claw marks. Deep, jagged gashes gouged the earth deeply. Schmidt's heart sank as he realized the markings were fresh. Whatever had done this was close. Too close. Where's Braun? Schmidt asked, though he already knew the answer. The men exchanged uneasy glances. We heard noises last night, Huffman said quietly. He went to check them out. Never came back. The unease among the men was palpable. Schmidt knew he had to keep his team together, mentally and physically. But as night fell, the silence was broken by distant, animalistic growls. That don't sound like no girl I've ever heard. They stayed on high alert, but no attack came. Day 15. The days dragged on. The men grew more paranoid, jumping at every sound. They stuck close to the trench, keeping their patrol short and infrequent. Each night, the growls seemed to come closer. On the morning of the 15th day, Schmidt found Huffman missing from his post. They searched frantically, but there was no sign of him. Just more claw marks and a discarded rifle. Damn it, Schmidt cursed under his breath. We can't keep losing men like this. I have no idea. Schmidt caught himself yelling into the radio. Some kind of animal. Then deal with the problem, Lieutenant, a crackling reply came. We are not sending reinforcements because the Dracs brought a dog with them. This was no dog. The claw marks in the trench were almost a foot deep. HQ out, was the only reply as the radio went silent. Day 16. That night, the squad decided to set up a trap. They placed motion sensors and cameras around the perimeter, hoping to catch a glimpse of the unseen predator. The tension was suffocating as they waited in the dugout, eyes glued to the monitors. About midnight, a flicker of movement caught Schmidt's eye. He leaned in closer, heart pounding. There, on the edge of the camera's view, was a shadow, low to the ground, moving with an eerie, fluid grace. Before Schmidt could get a closer look, the camera feed cut out in a hiss of static. Everyone on high alert, Schmidt ordered, grabbing his rifle. The men scrambled, weapons at the ready, as they listened for any sign of the creature. For hours, nothing happened. Just as dawn began to break, they heard it. The same growl, now impossibly close. A scream echoed through the trench works, followed by gunfire. Schmidt rushed towards the sound, only to find another man gone, his post deserted. Day 17. Schmidt ducked behind the trench parapet, just listening. He doubted he would be able to understand the yells, even if he could hear them clearly. Looking over the top, all he could see clearly was the laser and auto rifle fire flashing coming from the Drax trench works. Schmidt looked at Weber, then back toward the chaos of the enemy trench works, and the blood-curdling screams filling the night sky from their direction. Day 18. The trench was almost silent. As what was left of Schmidt's squad fanned out, they explored what they dared of the enemy trenches. Empty shell casings, spent power packs, and more than one officer's katana littered the ground. But nothing could be found of the soldiers themselves. Schmidt knelt down and picked up a piece of body armor. It had been shredded by something long, sharp, and slightly curved. The body armor had absorbed some of the wearer's blood before it had fallen off to the ground. One of the few pieces of real evidence that meshed with the screams they had all heard the night before. What was perhaps the most disconcerting was the complete absence of bodies. The trench itself gave testament about the battle that had been fought here. Laser burns, bullet holes, blast marks of a fragmentation grenade. Yet no bodies. Back to our side, Schmidt said, swallowing hard. He half expected Weber or one of the others to protest. This was a golden chance to capture what could be valuable intel. Orders, maps, radios, code books. But none of that mattered. Without a word, the group backed out of what was now a tomb, fled top speed back to the safety of their own dugout. Day 19. Schmidt knew they couldn't stay on the hill much longer. They were being picked off one by one. Morale was crumbling. He radioed command requesting immediate evacuation, but the response was disheartening.
Negative, Lieutenant. Hold your position. Reinforcements are days away. Do not, I repeat, do not abandon the hill.
Schmidt slammed the radio down in frustration. They were being left to die. Schmidt knew they couldn't hold out much longer. Their supplies were dwindling, and the men were exhausted, but abandoning their post wasn't an option. He gathered his squad and laid out a plan. We move in pairs. Keep each other in sight at all times. We're not losing any more men, Schmidt said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing him. And then nodded, gripping their rifles tightly. They knew the stakes. Day 21. The pairs moved cautiously through the trench network, their eyes scanning every shadow. The nights were the worst. The darkness felt oppressive. Every rustle of leaves or snap of twigs sent them on edge. In the early hours of the morning, Schmidt and his partner, Private Weber, heard something. It was a low, guttural growl, close enough to feel the vibration on her chest. Stay close, Schmidt whispered. They moved towards the sound, rifles at the ready. Suddenly, a shadow darted in front of them, too fast to be fully comprehended. Weber fired his rifle, but the bullets only hit air. Fall back, Schmidt ordered. Pulling Weber with him, they retreated to the dugout. But the creature didn't follow. Day 22. Another man went missing overnight. They found his rifle and helmet, but no trace of the soldier himself. Schmidt radioed command again, desperate for support.
Hold your position, Lieutenant. Reinforcements will be there soon,
came the reply. Schmidt slammed his fist against the earthworks wall. They were being fed the same lines, left to fend for themselves against an unseen predator. Day 23. The men were on edge, every noise sending them into high alert. They moved all their gear and supplies into the central dugout, hoping the added security would deter the creature. Schmidt posted guards at every entrance, rotating shifts to keep everyone rested as possible. At night, as Schmidt made his rounds, he heard a faint, melodic singing coming from the darkness beyond the trench. He froze, listening. "It's trying to lure us out," he realized. The men were silent, tense. They had to remain vigilant, not give in to the creature's ploys. Day 25. Another day, another man gone. Schmidt's squad was down to himself, Weber, and Yuuzhan. They were pale, exhausted, and paranoid. Schmidt knew they were on the brink of breaking. "We need to hold out just a little longer," Schmidt said, trying to rally. "Reinforcements are on their way." He wasn't sure how much longer they could last. The creature seemed to be toying with them, picking them off, one by one. Day 27. Schmidt sat alone in the dugout, shaking. His bloodshot eyes had not left the barricaded bunker door in days. He sat awake, listening to the woman sing. Pistol in hand, Schmidt listened to the song over and over. "Follow me home, my weary one. Night has come, the day is done. Follow me through shadows deep. Home awaits, at last you sleep. Lay your troubles at the door. Feel at peace forevermore. In my loving arms you'll find rest. I promise you home, oh truly blessed." Unknown. Schmidt startled awake to footsteps outside the dugout door. His hand shaking, he lifted the pistol, firing at the door, but the scratching and clawing would not stop. Shaking in fear, Schmidt heard voices, but he knew it was just another trick. His mind's eye seeing the creature's jaws coming for him, he lifted the pistol and squeezed the trigger. As all went dark. She slithered back through the den's opening. She had to retract her legs, and even then her swollen body just cleared the entrance to the underground burrow. The strange creatures who had recently began nesting on her hill were quite tasty and filling. Her two stomachs were filled to overflowing. She could feel herself becoming drowsy as her digestion system began to convert the biomass into the energy she would need to lay more eggs. She laid out on the open space, her vision adjusting so she could see clearly despite the darkness. She would sleep, lay her eggs, then make her way back to the hilltop. She did not understand how, but somehow the little creatures always replenished themselves. There would be a loud noise, thunder, despite a clear sky, and then there would be more of them. That had happened countless times. Not that she could count, or even really have a clear understanding of the concept of numbers at all. All she knew was that she had perfected her hunting technique. She always thinned their numbers first. Alone, the creatures could not harm her. Yet in large enough groups, they could sometimes cause her great pain. She did not understand how, just that they could, so care was always called for. Before she surrendered herself to sleep, she began to vocalize like the little creatures. She had learned the strange sound back when she used to have to leave the hill to eat. But now the food came to her. It was how she lured the creatures away from each other. Perhaps it was their mating call. She did not know. As her eyes closed, she looked out at row after row of eggs. In another few hundred cycles, her offspring would begin to hatch. Then she would need more of the little creatures. Many, many, many more. Day 1. The engines of the drop shuttle whined as Chu-Lee Tanaka and his squad hit the ground, fanning out in the clearing. There was a loud thud as a pallet containing gear and supplies quickly followed them down. After securing the area, they began to offload the pallet and split up the loads. Even this far back from the front lines, there was always the danger that an enemy sniper or some other unknown threat could be around. Once they felt safe enough, they began to divide the packs and satchels between them. The war had ground to a halt, and had long since stalemated. Each side dug into trenches, set up artillery batteries. The result was a pair of trench lines separated by miles of a dead zone, a no man's land, that neither side was overly willing to risk committing their few heavy tanks or battle mech assets. Chu-Lee Tanaka and his squad had been assigned to Kogen 1157, a very important piece of terrain in this zone of the conflict. It was one of the few high spots that had a view of the flatland all around it. It was a key location for calling in air and artillery strikes. The enemy had not missed the importance of Kogen 1157, or Haka no Aka, translated from the local barbarian tongue.
Hello, this is Adam with DreamMadeProductions. Thank you for watching my content. It really means a lot that you have given me the chance to entertain you. If you would like to support the channel, please visit my Patreon at patreon.com/DreamMadeProductions, linked below. Also below is a link for PayPal, or links if you would like to send crypto, if that's more your thing. Please know any amount that you give will be cherished and used to upgrade equipment and improve the channel. You can also help the channel by subscribing, turning on notifications, liking, commenting, and sharing my channel with anyone you think might be interested. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoy the battle reps that are to come.